What is going on? Back again with another review. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the expansion system. Now, there's all this talk about expansion coming to MLB in the future with 2 more expansion teams being added. And I wanted to kind of take a look, actually, if they were in the league, how the whole expansion system will work, because I feel like it's really not talked about as much when it comes with the whole expansion process. Most people just want to see what cities are going to get it. But we're going to be going over how the expansion system would work if there were 2 new teams added to Major League Baseball. And for this, we're going to be taking a look at the last expansion, which was in 1998, which is crazy to think about, which we added the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Tampa Bay Rays, which is very exciting. Obviously, as you guys can see, we're on the Wikipedia, adding kind of the history of the Diamondbacks, history of the Devil Rays, and then we kind of see the history of the 6 expansion drafts in Major League Baseball. Obviously, 1968 was pretty crazy with 4 new teams, but nowadays it's probably going to be 2 teams, which is all the rumors we're hearing, especially with what Rob Manfred has said about expansions. So that's pretty exciting. As we see, the 1997 expansion draft was the last time we had an expansion draft. You guys can see the little logo here, which looks pretty cool. But this is the last time we had an expansion draft. And the process to do it is very interesting. And I think the same process would work because I looked at all the other expansion drafts. They're pretty much the same for the most part. So how it would work is both expansion teams would select 35 players, which is 70 picks across the whole league. So how it would work is 35 players would be selected for both teams, so up to 70 selections in this expansion draft, which is pretty crazy to think about. Each team would select 14 players in round 1, 14 players in round 2, and 7 players in round 3. And obviously both general managers were overseeing the selections at the time. You guys can see the names right here. And basically how this would work is each team cannot pick any of the protected list of the 28 teams. So each team has their own protective list of guys that, are not going to be in the expansion draft. It doesn't really say how many that is for every single team, but I would imagine if we're using a 26-man roster, I imagine it's 20 of those players probably. That's just what I'd guess, and I imagine they would have to be MLB players. I doubt you could pick minor league players, or they maybe have to have like a year of service time maybe or something like that. So that's what I would kind of think for those rules. And this was the key caveat, is although no team could lose more than 1 player in a given round. So that was the caveat. So the max you could lose was 6 players on 1 team. So that's why if it's a 26-man roster now, probably 20 players would be protected if I had to guess. So this is what it goes on to say. For the first round, 15 players from the rosters of the entire organization, both their 40-man roster plus all their minor league affiliates. So that is pretty crazy. I guess you could pick minor league players if you want to. And that's kind of crazy thinking about this today, because there's a lot of good minor league players that literally just got drafted that are in the league right now, or that are going to be in the league very soon. And that goes on to say each team can add 3 more players to its protective list after each round. So that was kind of the caveat as well. And then it goes on to say all players in an organization will eligible be drafted except for those with no previous major league experience who had less than 3 years of service if signed at age 19 or older, or had less than 4 years of service if signed at age 18 or younger. So that's kind of what I was talking about basically. If they didn't have enough major league experience, would they be drafted? There's the answer right there. And then players who were free agents after the end of the 1997 season did not need to be protected. So that's what you have on there. I guess any of those guys could have went. And then they did a coin toss to kind of see who would pick first, who would pick second, basically. And that's how they would do this. And you can actually see all the picks. This green part means they were an all-star that year. So we kind of see Bobby Abreu going from the Astros to the Rays. There's a ton of picks, and you can obviously judge it now because all these guys' careers are basically over at this point. So you can kind of be the main judge of if these were good picks or not at the time, or if they should have went with someone else that was available. There was a decent amount of all-stars that got picked on this list from that previous season, so it's definitely interesting to think about. And you can even sort this by team. So we can obviously see the Angels had 2 guys picked, the Braves had 3, Orioles had 3, and the Cubs and all these teams had 2 and 3. Basically, if you were an existing MLB team, the max amount of players you could lose was 3 basically. So that's something to think about. So if this system was brought today with 30 teams being able to get picked, I feel like this system will be just fine in my opinion. I think with the rules, you might have to tweak it to today's game, right? Because it's a little bit different than it was back then with all the different teams and how the rosters work and all that stuff. And obviously, especially with minor league players being a super huge part of organizations nowadays, I think some of these rules might have to be tweaked or updated. So this is probably how the expansion draft would work when 2 new teams are added. It's definitely something to think about with what players you would protect or what players you'd leave open to. I think, if there's like a fringe guy or he's got 1 year left on his deal, that might be a player you want to not protect maybe because you might get rid of him anyways. Or maybe if a player's just not doing good, Anthony Volpe, for example, you cannot leave him protected. I don't know why he was the first player I thought of that is not really doing the best right now, but a guy that is not really doing the best could be a player that you want to put on one of these lists, or a player that you want to leave unprotected. You know what I mean? So it is very interesting to think about how this expansion draft would work, especially in today's day and age, because you'd imagine it'd be like 20 players that would probably be protected or something like that. Like there would be a lot of players protected, I feel like, with these whole expansion drafts. And when you look at these, teams in their first couple of seasons, a lot of the teams were really bad. I mean, we could take a look at the two teams we literally just covered, right? Obviously, the Devil Rays were not good, right? This team really didn't have a good season until 2008 when they won the division and went to go on to lose in the World Series, right? But look at all these years where they just basically struggled, didn't have a season over 500 until 2008. So they were ones that struggled for a while. The Diamondbacks had some pretty good success, obviously, early on. Their first season was not good, right? 97 losses was not the best. The next season, they make the playoffs with 100 wins, lose to the Mets. Still positive, didn't really get in the playoffs, probably missed out by a couple games. And then 2001 is really going to win their first World Series in their fourth season. So pretty solid for, season 2 and season 4. But the first season was definitely not it. But they definitely turn around pretty quickly. And they've had some really good success over their franchise history with some NL West, division wins. We've seen some wild card appearances recently. 2023 was obviously their most recent success. In 2024, they barely missed out on the postseason. So I think the Diamondbacks have had some pretty good history so far. So if you look at the 1993 expansion with the Colorado Rockies and the Miami Marlins, you can obviously see a similar path. Their first season, they were not good in the NL West. Obviously lost 95 games. And in 1994, they weren't having the greatest season still. I mean, the postseason and the rest of the season was canceled with the whole strike. But then the next year, they make a wild card appearance and they are in the postseason. So, we can kind of see some success, but the Rockies, they've had some good seasons, had some positive seasons after that postseason appearance. And then their big season in 2007, where they lost the World Series to the Red Sox, right? And then pretty much from there, same kind of thing. They've had a couple postseason appearances, but nothing crazy. And as of recent times, it hasn't been well. And the Marlins kind of are a similar thing. Their first couple of seasons were really not good, right? The first 4 were not good. But after that, they turn around, I want to say in 96 and 97. Obviously, they had a very good team and they spent a decent amount of money. And I think the Florida Marlins are a great example of kind of buying the World Series. I think you can kind of see that with a lot of the players they had. And you kind of see the contracts they had at the time, because look at this. They go from, 500 to 92 wins and then win the World Series. Then they were just horrible after everyone left. And then same kind of thing happens in 2003, 91 wins once again, and they're going to win the World Series, and they were kind of a decent team after that. So, I don't know, these examples are very interesting to look at, but obviously their first 2 World Series, and then pretty much as of recently, since, 2003, they've had 2 postseason appearances, and it hasn't really been good. They've been an organization that's been down there for quite some time, but back then they were pretty solid. A lot of these examples, it's those first couple of seasons where they just struggle with this new roster, right? We're kind of seeing that a lot throughout the last couple of expansions. And then a lot of these teams, after they figure out what they're doing, I feel like they can find success after getting some players or drafting some players, or, their talent finally comes up the system and they have a really good squad. But that's basically how the next expansion draft would work. We have 70 players getting picked, basically 35 for each team, and then the teams can predict a certain amount of players, and obviously all this stuff would be need to be updated for whenever we have 2 more expansion teams come in the future. But it is definitely something to look at. What is your guys' thoughts on the expansion system that we've had in MLB history? Do you think we need to change it? Do you think we need to update that system? Let me hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, everyone.